As Cooler, Vegeta, and Goku arrived, Piccolo and the previously bald sidekick of the Saiyan were rounding up the two boys around the lookout. Obviously, one of them resembled his future counterpart, whom the Emperor had already met many years ago. The other one, though, was eerily similar to his father, all the way down to the hairdo. It was almost as if they'd used some kind of technology on their own species to create an almost perfect copy. Now, Cooler could relate, but he was sure that this wasn't the case. After all, why would these Earthlings have such technology to clone people perfectly? For just a victory on the genetic lottery, yes, that's all. So, these are runts that you believe are going to be saving us from Majin Buu. They seem rather amateurish. The Emperor's gaze narrowed, casting a beam towards the really annoyed Kid Trunks.
Hey, watch it, mister, or I'm gonna have some words with ya.
Cooler approached them, almost nose to nose with the boy in a matter of seconds. Oh, really? He looked him in the eyes, which caused the kid to violently gulp, until Vegeta got closer and put a hand on the boy's shoulder. Don't you dare threaten my son, he said with his teeth gritted. You misunderstood me, Prince, as always. I wouldn't dream of threatening our so-called secret weapon. No, I had seen Son Goku's crazy ideas and recognized that there was something behind them after all. I am merely checking out the boy's fighting spirit. If the apple hadn't fallen far from the tree, that is. Do you mind if I check both of them in a quick spar? Don't worry, I won't go into my 5th or 6th forms if that is your concern. If we are to prepare these two, I want to know exactly what I am dealing with. Piccolo and Vegeta said nothing, looking toward each other, as if they were silently going, should we really be doing this? Well, it was no surprise that there was no kind of trust toward the Emperor from their direction, which in Cooler's mind was a good, pragmatic stance to have. Not to trust people fully, no matter how many good deeds they had done. Son Goku, nevertheless, broke the silence.
Yeah, sure. I'd like to see that too. I don't got much time left, so, yeah, we better get moving.
Kakarot, are you absolutely serious? You can't just be... Vegeta started protesting.
Calm down. Cooler's on our side in this. He wouldn't want to compromise our chances of winning, would he?
Goku looked toward the Emperor with some intensity, as if he was just going silently. Right? Of course not. I am merely proposing some more gloves-off approach, if you might say. Now, listen up, runts. Your objective is simple. You have to break through my defenses and force me to retreat. Understood? You can use everything you have in your arsenal to do it. And if you can do it, you win. Simple as. Cooler eyed the boys to make sure that they had understood.
Put you on the defensive? Well, that sounds pretty easy. You better be ready to swallow your words, old man, because we're coming for you. Right, Goten?
Trunks looked particularly full of himself. Yeah, he was Vegeta's son, all right.
Right.
The son of Goku, however, was less thrilled, much more nervous, and it seemed more like his older brother's influence had gotten to him. He was a bit of a softie, but Cooler was very curious about the potential of this one, more so than Trunks. Very well, the Emperor said, crossing his arms. Go. Like two small projectiles, the boys shot out in order to attack him. He just turned around to whip both of them with a quick flish of his tail. They should have seen it coming, but this motivated them to continue and to go Super Saiyan. Good. No wasting time then. Initially, their strikes had been seen as erratic in nature, very chaotic. They felt a little aimless, a bit brutish. It seemed that the two of them lacked discipline. He decided to fly upward as he kicked Trunks onto his friend. You are like flies hitting a glass window. Concentrate. Also, tiny Goku, you have to try better. I can see you are being held back by your doubts. Start acting serious.
His name is Goten!
Trunks shot a ki blast, which Cooler simply dodged with a slight deflection of the upper part of his body. Is it then? Then it is his business to make me remember it. Make me care about him as an opponent and not as your sidekick. You two want to leave an impression, correct? Get your act together. Otherwise, you are a disgrace to your families. The two boys grumbled and started to change tack. They tried to go for some symmetrical techniques, patterns, but Even these were so painfully predictable. Cooler didn't even have to use his arms to keep them at bay. But still, they were changing things up, so he was not discouraged by their attempts. They were doing something, because it was clear that when he first arrived on Earth, had he encountered these two, he would have been in serious trouble. But since then, he had evolved. He had grown as a fighter. Nevertheless, their potential was undeniable, but he couldn't let on right now. Maybe even bigger than Gohan's, but still, a little bit of good old-fashioned taunting couldn't hurt. Come on, there are two of you and only one little old me. How hard can it be to defeat me, really? The boys seemed particularly irritated by this remark, and they then gained some distance on opposite sides of Cooler. Trunks went for a double beam attack from both of his hands, while the son of Goku decided for a classic Kamehameha. As they shot at him, he simply rotated in the air like a ballerina, and using the wind created by that, he deflected the projectiles towards both of them, much to their surprise. Then, he quickly charged behind Trunks, and he hit him with his tail to meet his friend. As they both collided in the air, they fell off the lookout surface towards the ground. Cooler tilted his head though, not worried about them falling. Well, Son Goku, for now they lack discipline, synchronicity, and a tactical mindset. I can now see why you needed my help. We don't need your help, Cooler, Vegeta glared at the Emperor. Is that what you say? Well, it seems to have worked out well for them so far. What was that supposed to mean? The prince was getting very quiet now, fury starting to bubble up in his voice. You are losing focus on important matters, Vegeta. You almost let barbarity into your head. You can waste your time snarling at me, or, dare I say it, fighting me. But I don't think we have time for either of those options, do we? You never were much of a team player, and it shows in the way you've trained your child. And trust me, on some level, I do understand. But this is something that we have to fix. I will be more than happy to go for that rematch once Majin Buu is no more. If killing this thing is even possible. Vegeta said nothing. It was always weird when the Emperor sounded, dare I say it, reasonable. He looked to Piccolo and Goku. Well, we did honor our agreement during the Soul Crisis, the Namekian said quietly. I get it. I wasn't much of a team player myself, but also pragmatism teaches to take the most practical solutions to deal with the issues at hand, and our big pink issue isn't going to solve itself. So, how about we try to improve what was lacking? The prince said nothing. Again, he just helped his son up.
Sorry, Dad. He was so quick.
Vegeta slightly ruffled his hair and said to his son very quietly so only the two of them could hear, You did good. Shut up. Despite the harshness of the tone, the boy's eyes brightened. Meanwhile, Son Goku aided his progeny, and despite some initial doubts, they were soon joking and laughing about the whole ordeal as if it weren't a problem. Yeah, families were weird, thought Cooler. So, what's your plan? Piccolo started up slowly, looking toward Goku.
Well, we should teach them the fusion dance. Are any of you aware of it?
I could dig up some memories from Kami, so, yeah. The Namekian nodded slowly. Before we do any of that, we need to make sure that the two equal their power, if my deduction is correct. Cooler looked towards Goku for any sign of confirmation. He got it.
Oh yeah, right. That's pretty important. Otherwise it won't work.
One of them is pretty prone to showing off, while the other doesn't want to overshadow his little friend. The Emperor glared at Trunks. He really did not like that kid.
Hey!
The son of the prince shook his fist, but got a stern look from his father. As much as I hate to admit it, I do agree with Cooler, he sighed. This is not a competition. You have to work, boy, in sync.
And you, Goten, don't be afraid of your power. You need to work as a unit if you want to fuse. Remember, you're a team.
Goku patted his younger son on the shoulder, and Cooler looked at the sickening show of earthen affection and decided to cut it short. So, are you two ready to give it another go? This time, do it properly. Trunks looked at Goten, and after a moment of uneasiness and hesitation, the younger of the two nodded.
You bet! This time, you won't be so full of yourself.
The Emperor wagged a finger at them. First achieve something, then boast. Remember that. It is not about your ego. This is about fulfilling a goal. Focusing too much on my own self-importance was my downfall when I faced Son Goku for the first time. I will not be making that same mistake again. Ever. And as the son of one of my many enemies, you better take heed of this lesson, child. In a fight, there is no place for self-confidence until you have any kind of results to back it up. Always fight with the intention of winning. Do not assume that you have already won, or I will gladly use that cockiness against you. He wasn't sure if the boy understood the words he had said. He allowed them to have a short private consultation before starting their second attempt at his little task. Then they began. This time, it was about trying to confuse him with some very quick movements. He had to admit that it would have worked if he hadn't seen that coming, but he had. As they tried to synchronize their seemingly random attacks, he still had an upper hand over them both. Cooler then decided to praise their attempts, however, in the only way he knew. Good job! That was almost threatening, but sadly the results are still disappointing. He could hear the frustration. Good. There was a chance that these two half-Saiyan runts would forge it into something useful and actually hit him. Once again, they decided on the double-angled ki blast approach. Had they learned anything? Was his praise too early? Well, he decided not to overestimate them. There might have been a scheme going down, hidden somewhere within that youthful tempestuousness. He could feel that this time, both projectiles were shorter and smaller, and during his rotation, he had lost sight of both of them for a split second. That was annoying, but also a good sign. The attack came from above, and this forced Cooler to use his arm to deflect. Oh, would you look at that, he thought. It seemed that they indeed had learnt something. Oh, good! Keep it up! He remembered some of his times training his old armored squadron, and the latter sparring session with Salza back in the time chamber over there. Those two were catching up rather quickly. Having such quick learners in his midst would have been very beneficial back in the day. He watched as the boys went into overdrive, attacking quickly and surely. He had to be really fast to deflect their attacks now. At the moment they posed no real threat, but he also couldn't find a time window to attack them with anything but a very hastily done energy charge that could have been kicked off from his transformation. They had created an impasse, and for now, that was good enough. Well, well, boys. It almost makes me want to meet you two up in actual battle when I finally invade this little planet for good.
Did we pass your little test or not?
Trunks was starting to get irritated again. I am unsure. What do your regular teachers over there think? That was pretty well synchronized, boys. Piccolo nodded, trying to be a little bit more forgiving. All right, now teach them your silly dance. I will watch. Cooler took a seat far away from them, with the two boys still glaring at him. Oh, good. Nothing motivates you better than having a villain staring back at you. He quickly realized that his decision to be on the sidelines for this part of the training was a good one. Maybe the Metamoran dance could lead to great things, but it was something so utterly silly, so utterly idiotic, that the Emperor would never dare try to do that. Maybe it was a little bit hypocritical with this whole speech about the goal of the fight and needing to win, but at the end of the day, he was not the one nominated to end the threat of Majin Buu, so he intended to sit this one out, learning the fighting patterns of the boys and the eventual fused warrior. Making notes for the future could give him an advantage. Vegeta also didn't seem very keen on the prospect of this dance, and also decided to watch the fight from the sidelines. Their gazes met a couple of times, but they did not strike up a conversation. Why would they? Unfortunately, Son Goku's time in the world of the living had come to an end, and the task of continuing the whole thing fell to Vegeta. Me? Why me? You want me to ask Cooler then instead? The Namekian tilted his head. The Emperor smirked. The prospect of seeing the prince do all of those stupid dance moves was rather tempting. When it came to the boys' turns, there were some mishaps, as their initial fusions were weirdly misshapen. Every failed attempt cost them precious time. Finally, Vegeta snapped. Trunks, Don't try to rush it!
So sorry, Dad.
Finally, after what felt like an absolute eternity, they did it. Initially, the fused warrior tried to show off and go straight to fighting Majin Buu without any proper calibration or training. It was up to Cooler to show them that they were in no ready state to fight the monster just yet, as he was able to easily outmaneuver them still, but then having to go to his fifth form, causing the fusion to end prematurely. The three of them gave them exact instructions on the training regimes in the time chamber. Even Cooler was willing to share some of his own observations, and had limited his more malicious remarks to a minimum bit of a snarky response. Ready or not, they had to go in. The Emperor could see the worry on the face of the prince. He was annoyed that he couldn't be there with the boys, that's for sure. What are you staring at? The prince hissed at Cooler. Just wondering, do you have so little faith in your own progeny? Vegeta was beginning to turn to confusion by that remark, instead of anger. What's that supposed to mean? He's already stronger than the future one, at such a young age to boot. These two put my little brother to shame, and he was already some kind of freak amongst our clan. What is your point? My point is that you can change nothing at this point. Everything that has to happen is in their hands right now. If you train them well, there is nothing you'll have to worry about. There was a moment of silence. Was Cooler trying to calm Vegeta down? Was he mocking him? Showing respect? They didn't have a lot of time to think this through, because they suddenly felt something truly terrifying. Something had shifted down on Earth. It almost seemed like Majin Buu had been reborn. And this reborn version was even scarier than the last one. And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now.